Aloha mai kako, Avelina mai ke aloha no Hawaii. Hello everyone and welcome to Ke Aloha no Hawaii. In Keia Vikyo, in this video, we are learning Nahua Helu, numbers. We've got a lot to cover in this video, so feel free to pause and rewind whenever you need to. First, we're going to look at the base form of the numbers 1 through 9, and you'll see what I mean by base form. Then we'll be using that base form to build the numbers 10 through 99. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between using numbers to count versus using them to quantify a number of objects. We'll talk about a couple of ways to express the number 0. And finally, we'll look at how to say our larger numbers. So looking at the base forms of the numbers 1 through 9, think about base forms as building blocks, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we use the building blocks. But let's just learn the base forms for now. 1 is kahi. 2, lua. 3, kolu. 4, ha. Notice the kahako over the a. Ha. 5, lima. 6, ono. Notice there's not an okina before that o. Ono, not ono. 7, hiku. 8, valu. And 9, iva. Again, there is no okina before the i, iva. Let's review those again. Kahi, lua, kolu, ha, lima, ono, hiku, valu, iva. Okay, now let's use these base forms to build our other numbers. Looking at the numbers 10 through 9, let's start by learning the number 10, which is umi. And then 11 will really be 10 plus 1. So we start with 10, umi, and then we need a connecting word or phrase, which is kuma. Or in some older texts you might see kumama. But nowadays, more likely you're going to hear kuma. And then we'll use our base form for 1. Do you remember what that is? Kahi. So putting it all together, umi kuma kahi, or umi kuma ma kahi. And we'll use that same pattern to build 12 through 19. Let's remind ourselves of the base forms of the numbers 1 through 9, and let's build these numbers. We'll start with 12. Remember, we start with 10, which is umi, then our connecting phrase, kuma, and then our base form for 2, lua. Umi kuma lua. Umi kuma lua. 12. And how about 13? Yep, we start with umi kuma, 10, plus our connecting phrase, and then just add the base form for 3, kolu. Umi kuma kolu. 14, umi kuma ha. Umi kuma ha. 15, umi kuma lima. Umi kuma lima. 16, umi kuma ono. Now remember when we said there's no okina there. So the ma really needs to blend into the ono, creating that diphthong between the ako and the o. Umikuma ono, not umikuma ono, because there's no okina. So umikuma ono. 17, umikuma hiku. Umikuma hiku. 18, umikuma valu. Umikuma valu. And 19, umikuma iva. And again, we need that diphthong. Umikuma iva. Umikuma iva. And now to build the rest of the numbers 20 through 99, again, we're going to use that same pattern where you have your tens place, 20, 30, 40, etc. You have your connecting phrase, kuma, and then you have your base form of the numbers 1 through 9. So we really just need to learn our words for 20, 30, 40, etc. Let's start with 20. The word for 20 is ivakalua. Ivakalua. So how would we say 21? Ivakalua for our tens place, then kuma, our connecting word, and then we need the base form for 1, kahi. Ivakalua kuma kahi. 21. And we'll use that pattern for everything from 20 to 99 and upwards, actually. So we just need to learn our words for that tens place, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And the great thing about 30 and through 90 is making those numbers are really easy because they're all going to start with the phrase kana. And then at the end, we're going to use that base form of 3 through 9. So 30 is kana kolu. Kolu again is the base form of 3, kana kolu. 40, kana ha. 50, kana lima. 60, kanaono. Again, we create that diphthong, kanaono. 70, kanahiku. 80, kanavalu. And 90, kanaiva. Again, create that diphthong between the a and the e, kanaiva. And to create any numbers between 10 or 99, again, use the tens place plus your connecting phrase kuma plus your base form of the numbers 1 through 9. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about counting numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 between versus quantifying something. 5 books, 4 cars. And let's start by looking again at our base forms of the numbers 1 through 9. Now we use these base forms to create bigger numbers, right? And we also are going to add some phrases or letters or prefixes for different uses of these numbers. First is counting. Now, when you count out things, you can just use these base forms. Kahi, lua, kolu, ha. But more often these days, you're going to see these numbers appended with a prefix, okina e. E kahi, e lua, e kolu, e ha, e lima, e ono, e hiku, e valu, e iva. Also, if you just saw the digit or the number or the figure 5, and someone asks you, what number is this? This is the form you would use. So if someone shows you the digit 5 and they say, what number is this? You would say, e lima, not lima. Other uses of this, phone numbers, you could use this, or actually for phone numbers, because it's such a long string of numbers, oftentimes people will just use the base forms, but it's your choice. And when you're quantifying objects, say 5 boxes, for example, you are going to use this form with the okina e. So it's not going to be lima pahu, it'll be e lima pahu, 5 boxes. With one exception, if you're quantifying an object and there's only one of them, say 1 car, we have a different form, and that is ho'okahi. Ho'okahi ka'a, 1 car. But elua ka'a, 2 cars. So again, if you're counting, say there's 1 car and you're counting, you're like ekahi, and then you would say, oh, ho'okahi ka'a, 1 car. And that's the only exception. If you're counting larger numbers, 10 onwards, it's just the same number versus counting or quantifying. It's really these forms 1 through 9 that you're going to have slightly different forms. And similarly with the number 0. If you're counting, the word for 0 is ole. Now, you don't really count 0 that often, but say it was in a phone number, you would use ole. And remember what I said about phone numbers? You can use just the base form, and a lot of people will just use the base form. So you might say lima lima lima, ole kahilua kolu. Or you could say e lima e lima e lima, ole e kahi e lua e kolu. There's no form of 0 with that a, it's just ole. But if you are quantifying using 0, you use aohe. So say 0 cars, or really no cars. Aohe ka'a. So ole, if you're just talking about the figure or the digit 0, but if you're quantifying something, saying essentially there is no a number of objects, 0 number of objects, aohe. And finally, let's look at larger numbers. 100, 1,000, million. The word for 100, haneli. The word for 1,000, kaukani. And the word for million, miliona. I will note, and you can kind of tell by these words, these are essentially just taking the English words and transliterating them into Hawaiian, kind of taking the actual English word and transferring them over to how you would say it with the Hawaiian alphabet and Hawaiian sounds. And that is because in traditional Hawaiian, they didn't really think of larger numbers with the tens place, like the 100, 1,000, million. They actually thought about it as 400. There are actually ancient Hawaiian words for 400, 4,000, etc. And we'll talk about that maybe in another video. So I just wanted to make that note. And these are kind of the base forms. And you would say how many hundreds, right? We say 100, ho'okahi haneli. And sorry, my okina is actually reversed there. Ho'okahi haneli, because you're quantifying how many hundreds there are. There's 1, so that's why we use ho'okahi. 200, elua haneli. Again, we're quantifying, so we use elua, not lua haneli. And 1,000, similarly, 5,000, you're quantifying how many thousands, so e lima kokani. And those are the numbers. It was a lot to cover, so please save this video, go back to remind you any of those. But now you can quantify things, you can say your phone number, you can count, and yeah, try to use this in your everyday lives. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like it and subscribe. That helps my videos get discovered by more people trying to learn the Hawaiian language. If you have people in your life who you know are trying to learn Hawaiian, please share this video and my channel with them. And until next time, a hui hou.